Good afternoon. We are here on June 9th for a Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee work session. And we have two items on today's agenda, starting with Zoning Text Amendment 2504, Overlay Zones, Bethesda Overlay Zone. Much of this is the implementation of the work that we had done previously in committee and carrying out what work we had started. We have the Planning Department and Planning Board Chair here. Happy to turn it over to them for any initial comments, should they have any, and if not, we'll turn it over to council staff.
No initial comments other than to say we're delighted to be here to move this to its fruition. We want to thank council staff for working with us so graciously on this, and we're looking forward to our work session today. Thank you.
Great. I don't think there's any comments from colleagues. Let's turn it over to council staff. We can take these items up, starting with some consensus items that we had already essentially taken up, but this helps to implement, and we do have a few discussion points towards the end of the conversation.
Yes, so there was a public hearing held on the ZTA on April 1st. Those comments were similar to the testimony heard during the discussion of the master plan itself. A lot of that testimony was removal of the cap, which, as you know, was approved as part of the master plan. We also received written testimony, including an amendment that I will discuss towards the end here when we get to amendments. So moving to page 3 is where you will see the beginning of some of these consensus items. So the PHP committee actually reviewed many of the provisions of this ZTA at the second work session for the plan, and the committee agreed with many of those proposed changes. So I can just run through those pretty quickly, but we'll pause if you have any questions. So first is family-sized units. So the ZTA will allow existing MPDU incentives to apply to family-sized units, which is typically 3 or more bedrooms, as well as deeply affordable units. Second, the requirement to purchase BOS density. So the way the section was written, as you know, there's both commercial and residential density, and it read as having to use all of that mapped density before you can request the BOS density. The amendment the change being made in the ZTA is you can use either all the commercial or all the residential. That way there isn't commercial FAR left that is undesired or difficult to lease, and you can still get the BOS density for your residential. Next, moving to page 4, is what's called the use-or-lose density provision. So under the prior overlay zone, you had to apply for a building permit within 2 years of site plan approval, and then also pull a permit within an additional 2 years. Since the cap is being removed, there's no reason to have that use-or-lose provision anymore, since the intent of that provision was to make sure that land isn't being locked up. So the ZTA removes that section as well as the language about the cap, which you'll see further down on the page. The next thing being changed in the overlay zone is the public benefit points and energy efficiency. So as you know, the county's been working really hard to adopt more efficient standards, and now what was previously the overlay standards are what we just typically require throughout the county. And so the requirement here for additional density is being changed. So instead of saying you have to achieve 15 points in this public benefit category, it'll just say you have to exceed the applicable building or energy codes, whatever they may be, which allows the county to update those codes and have it be reflected accurately in this overlay without having to keep coming back and change it. I have already talked about the cap, so I'm going to move to the top of page 5. The state of Maryland designated downtown Bethesda as an arts and entertainment district that's now managed by the Bethesda Urban Partnership. As part of the public benefits for this overlay, you could submit fee payments to these organizations. So the ZTA 2504 is going to add the BUP, the Bethesda A&E District, and other civic arts organizations as accepting payments for that public art. Next, as you know, when you went through the master plan, there's a big desire for a recreation center in this overlay. And so there's a few changes being made that will hopefully encourage that to happen. First is public open space. This will allow the planning board to reduce the public open space requirement if the developer is providing land or space for a new recreation center. And then similarly, allow the board to approve up to 24 feet of additional height if there's provision of a new recreation center. So those are all the changes or things that are in the ZTA as introduced that the committee basically tentatively agreed to when you were working through the master plan. And if there's no questions.
Any tentative disagreements with our tentative agreement, so we still agree to agree on.
Still agree through agreeable. Okay, so proposed amendments begin on page 5. So this one is actually a council staff tweak to a committee recommended amendment. So committee members at the time had asked park staff for a clarification regarding the PIP, which is the park impact payment for privately owned public spaces. The acronym there is POPs. There was a draft of language that the committee had reviewed previously, and it basically explains how the POPs would be eligible for the PIP, and any limits on the amount of that reduction. So in reviewing the ZTA, now that we're at this stage, council staff noted that there isn't actually a definition of a standalone POPs. So just to make it clear what that means, there's language at the top of page 6. This mirrors the language that the committee looked at when you worked on the master plan. The change here is if you go to C2A, it'll say a reduction for a POPs that does not expand existing or future Parks Department managed parkland, because that is what was meant by standalone. So it just clarifies what that language is, so there aren't questions later.
Yeah, my understanding is there was consultation with the planning department, and there's agreement there. So just wanted to confirm that for the record. We've got a thumbs up for those who can't see in the audience. I don't see any objection. That's the spirit of what we had agreed to, and this is just legal language that clarifies that. So without objection, we'll accept that change.
So quick explanation of process here. So usually the ZTA is introduced at the same time you're working on the master plan. So there are things that change in the master plan, and now you are going back and changing the ZTA, which brings us to this height incentive area. I know this was discussed a lot at committee previously. The original recommendation had been to expand that area. It was going to be a few blocks east of Arlington Road. The committee disagreed with that recommendation. Since it's still in the ZTA, since it's the version that was introduced, the committee recommended amendment here is to remove that language that expanded the area. And then second, there was a new map put in the zoning into the ZTA, so we are going to remove the new map and put the old map back in. And so that is what it looks like on page 7 for you.
Yeah, just to reiterate, this was a process-related issue where one thing was said during the process that we go through for these types of matters. There was a change that happened after the fact. The planning board, sympathetic to the underlying issue, made that change, but there was no opportunity for any input on that, and it was, a fairly significant change, at least for those. I actually don't disagree with the philosophical view, but I thought that the process was not a good process for moving forward, and I think there was understanding from planning once I explained the concern, and we landed where we did. Just wanted to kind of reiterate that was the discussion. The committee ultimately we agreed. So I don't see any objection to that. I think we'll accept that update and that change.
And a note here, at the time too, there is language in the master plan itself about looking at expanding that area down the line, but that's not in the ZTA, hence the amendment.
Right, and that was the recommendation from Planning Director Sartori as a bit of a compromise to move in the direction, which is a worthwhile direction, but in a process that would be more comfortable for everybody involved, which we appreciate. Okay?
So next up on page 8 is amendment to split the payments from the park impact payment. This was in the original ZTA. The idea here is that developers have advised that making that full payment at once can be a lot. And the two stages you could split it are applying for the building permit and then getting your use and occupancy permit. There's a technical amendment here from council staff. We've had issues or questions from DPS about saying something is due at permit, whether that means you can pay literally as you get your inspection. So the recommended language here is no later than issuance of, which will give DPS the right to continue their practice of not scheduling the inspection until they have received the money.
Not objection, that was the intent. This is just language that makes sure that common understanding of what it means and legal dictation of what it actually says are the same, so without objection.
Okay, so this is the, I think, last major substantive amendment here. So written testimony was received from Washington Property Company. There is language in the ZTA as introduced about site plan validity. As you know, the cap is being removed as well as the use and lose provisions. So the language in the ZTA had said that site plans that are still valid can have that deadline struck, so they no longer have to pull those permits in the 2-year phases. The request here was plans that had expired up to 12 months before the effective date of the ZTA should be reinstated. So council staff worked with planning staff on this one. There were a lot of things to consider. The very first is that we only found 2 projects that would be in that immediate 12-month back window, assuming this CTA doesn't get approved for another, well, we have to go to full council still. So whenever this gets approved, you go back 12 months, let's say sometime in July. So there were 2 projects. One is the Avondale and one is Hampton East. Of note, the written testimony is from Washington Property Company, who represent Hampton East, but we later actually received a letter from the developers from the Avondale project as well, so both have asked for this. Something else to note here is it would be the PIP rate that's in effect at the time of approval. As you know, that rate was increased, but since under Section F for these other plans that are having the deadline removed, they're also going to have the PIP rate, so council staff doesn't recommend changing that piece at this time. So the question here was the logistics of how reinstating a plan that has expired worked. You can't really do an amendment because there's nothing to amend because it doesn't exist. Right now, the process would be they would just have to refile. And there is language in the zoning code that lets the planning board set the fees. So an applicant could request a reduced fee for refiling, and that would be the solution currently if no amendment is made. Of course, that would still take staff time to do staff reports, go to the board, etc. So the way this language is in the resolutions is the deadline is a condition of approval by the board. So the fix here would be to amend that condition of approval. And there's a similar process in the subdivision ordinance where there's a standard you have to meet. The applicant would have to show practical difficulty or undue hardship. So with all of that combined, the things council staff considered along with planning staff in making this recommendation is whether there should be a case-by-case determination instead of making it automatic. If not automatic, should it be the planning director or the planning board? And then should there just be a reduced fee instead? So there's language at the bottom of page 10 that I will read here that says the planning director may approve a request for an amendment to remove a condition that resulted in a site plan being revoked due to failure to file an accepted building permit or obtain a building permit within 2 years if the preliminary plan is valid. The applicant must demonstrate that the building permit was not timely obtained due to practical difficulty or undue hardship. So it took kind of a combination of all those concerns and what the applicants asked for. One, it will actually give a period longer than 12 months as long as the preliminary plan is valid, because the concern here is you still want adequate public facilities to be in place, so you don't have to re-look at all of that, and that can be a 5 to 7 year window. So there might be some older than that 12 months where this could still apply, but they would have to actually ask the director and explain why they did not get those permits in that time frame, so that we're not reviving projects that maybe should be expired. So that's the language from council staff in collaboration with council staff.
Any views from planning before we weigh in?
We accept what the council staff had put together because it was in consultation with the planning department. So, and we want to make it as simple as possible.
Appreciate it. I think it's simple and straightforward. There's some precedent here, and having it not be automatic and being focused just on this and not every aspect where you could essentially reopen, and relitigate, previous issues, which is not something that I think we would be looking to do, and I know what planning had a concern about. So I would be comfortable with it. Let me turn to colleagues.
Yeah.
Councilman Joanna?
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thought I understood it, but then you kind of expanded it more as you explained it in my mind. My concern here is a couple questions and concerns. One, these are projects that have already, the deadline has already passed. So for whatever reason, there's a reason, obviously, that even under this language, they'd have to say, here's why. And I know in the letter we got from at least one of them, they explained at least a little bit about what the reasons were. So one, we have a current process. They could, just like anything else, they could reapply, and you already have discretion to lower the fees. The planning board could already do that. So that kind of leads me to, well, why would we create another special process when the current process could deal with this in some way? Two, we're already doing a review of all the projects in the pipeline. Planning is, and we've talked about that, which will include, I hope, as I've said, to you guys, looking at the fees and the timelines and how long it was reasonable to be in limbo and not, so that's the other kind of just thing hovering over this that is on my mind. And then there's the actual, just the fee itself, right? I think I don't have a huge problem if these projects want to move forward, they should reapply, number one. And if the board wanted to consider lowering fees because they are not that old, that's your prerogative. You have the authority to do that already. The only question one of the questions I would have, is there any public kicking of the tires, and that's a very technical term, like that is going to be missed by the director having this authority? I don't want to remove something from public process that should be in public process because it's no longer an approved application. And so I'm just, what are we gaining here? And then the cost of maybe a little bit of less transparency depending on what this process looks like, and the fees itself, right? Like if you let it expire, so we have the fees for a reason. If you apply again, you should pay the fees. So could you guys talk to some of that? I know it's a few things.
I can
Yeah.
add to that a little bit and then have Elza jump in as needed. So the first thing is it's a condition of approval in the plan. So what this is doing is it's requiring an amendment to eliminate that condition or set a new timeline on it. So it is a public process because it's an amendment. So it will get noticed, it will get posted as an amendment, which it does take time, but it doesn't take away that public aspect of it. It doesn't go to the board in this case because it says the planning director may approve it. If there were issues, since it says may approve, if there were issues, the planning director could say, I'm not comfortable with signing off on this, and would kick it to the board for a more formal review. But in this case, since it's dealing with kind of an extension of time, usually those would probably go through with the planning director.
So just so I understand what you're saying, so under the current process, if they were to reapply, that would obviously come to the board because it's a new application.
Right.
Under this process, it would not go to the board unless the director, for some reason, thought it should.
Right.
Okay, so that, yeah.
And then to add to that, if they were to reapply, they're paying the full fee unless we lowered the fee amount. But for an amendment, it's a few $1,000s to process the amendment versus a considerable amount more if it were a new application.
Right. And I get why they would say, well, hey, this train is moving, I don't want to pay again. I get why they're saying this, but there's a reason why they let it expire. So, I just think that should be discussed, and obviously there is some level of review at the director level here. I'm just trying to see if I'm comfortable with it kind of being removed from the public board process.
When an application is submitted, we usually get we get a statement of justification as to why they're processing that application, and some are more general and generic in nature than others who provide a little bit more specificity on what they're doing. But we would definitely be asking for why in terms of, I think it's pretty evident why, because they let it expire based on other market conditions, but we would still want to know that as part of the application.
And how long would the amendment would the reinstatement would give it how much of an additional timeline?
It really depends on how long the preliminary plan is valid.
Okay, so it
in
depends
this
on the
case,
specifics.
APF
Yeah.
sets a certain validity date, which is 5 to 7 years, so it depends on where they are in the queue on this. We wouldn't reset the APF date. This would just tie into what they have still under that validity period.
Got it. And then, Ms. Nadeau, you kind of opened the box that made me think that it could apply to other things other than these two projects.
Yes, so the two projects were found if we took the written testimony request was to just automatically reinstate everything that was 12 months before the effective date. Under this language, it removes that 12 months because the thinking was if their preliminary plan is still valid, that 12 months doesn't matter quite as much, especially if you're going to make them do the additional work of coming and presenting why it expired. But we looked at, the two projects we looked at were the 12 months because that was the original request from the letter we received.
Elsa Heisel McCoy, Chief Downtown County Planning for the record. This change would basically make it the same as downtown Silver Spring, for example. If I have a site plan that's approved and I can't move forward because of the economy, as long as my APF is sound, I can wait for the economy to come back. If it goes beyond APF, I have to go back and do the amendment. But we're only talking about this because Bethesda had that use or lose provision, which the other CBDs don't. So I think this really just sort of gets Bethesda into parity with Silver Spring and Wheaton and Friendship Heights.
That's the key.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I think that's the key point, so I'm glad you said I was going to ask you to explain how this would compare to a place like downtown Silver Spring. So you have answered the question before it even needed to be asked. Good line of questioning, but I think it's an important dynamic. We are changing the use it or lose it dynamic, and this is an adjustment where there were a couple that would have been caught in a different dynamic because of that use it or lose it dynamic that hadn't used it yet. And, we want projects to move forward. That's a good thing, particularly those that have been approved, and hopefully we can help facilitate that. Councilmember Jordan, yeah.
The one thing that's still bothering me is I'm fine generally with the reasoning, is that I'd like the planning board to do it, not just the director. I'd like there to be some bit of a public process here. Is that feasible?
So I think, as Robert mentioned, the applications would be there would be a sign posted. It would be noticed. All of the application materials would be available
Right,
online.
but there'd be no hearing. Well, what would that look like for public participation? Someone would have to notice the notice and then write in?
Which is the same as every other development application.
Right.
It would be noticed and handled the same way. Just instead of going, like a site plan would go to the board in 90 days, it would go to the planning director, and anybody who wanted to provide comment to say, no, this shouldn't be reinstated or whatever, would have the opportunity to do so.
But there just it wouldn't be, the only person who could decide is the director. We'd be empowering the director, not the board.
Yeah, but I will say that there are cases that go like that today in subdivision, and many times if they're controversial or if they're really complex, staff kicks it to the board. It just happens that way. So I would just say that
It would happen, and if it needed to happen, it would happen.
It would happen, yeah. Yep, and it just happens that way, and so you are taken care of, I feel, and we wanted to make the process simpler as possible, because for them to have to come to the board, it's a separate hearing, bring the attorneys, we want to make development. They've already checked all the other boxes. You want to make.
Right, this is a little different. They've been approved, and then it's expired. We're not talking about like a burden we're putting on them. They've let it expire, so it's a little different than.
Well, just to clarify, there's two aspects of this of expiration. What hasn't expired is the same process that happens in every other part of the county. What has expired was the unique process and circumstance that was created in Bethesda, the use it or lose it provision related to the BOS density. Right. We've essentially eliminated that as part of this mechanism. Now they have the same provision where their adequate public facilities approval, the preliminary plan, is still timely. So they haven't let it expire in that sense. The question is, should they be held to a deadline that we no longer are enforcing anymore, that we've eliminated? We made a public policy decision to eliminate the use it or lose it provision, and the question is, since that part has expired, should we hold them to a deadline for something that really doesn't exist? So this is a unique circumstance in the sense that it is the only place that it existed, and we have now eliminated it. And there's a couple projects that are somewhat caught in this limbo question. Now, whether it should go to the board or not is a philosophical question of how easy do you want it to be and how much discretion do you want to provide, and it's expensive. You know, it costs more to go to the board for a lot of different reasons. It costs more staff time on the government side. It costs more, administrative on the, applicant side. I think that's just a philosophical question. But if it's not as if this is expired entirely in a way that any other project would expire in any other place. In a place like Silver Spring, the validity period would be continuing. Normally, the extensions are to the validity period of the preliminary plan. That still exists, and that is still required here. It's a question of the use it or lose it BOS density dynamic, and we've eliminated that. That is the overarching question here. Do we want to continue with a deadline for a use it or lose it provision that we have now eliminated? That's really the fundamental question that we have.
And Councilmember Giwando, when we would be reviewing an amendment, it would be focused just on that condition. So it's not like we're reevaluating the entire case itself. It's really looking at that that particular condition, which in this case is that use it or lose it provision, if that helps.
That does help. So it's not a reevaluation of the site plan itself. It's just that amendment, which again we're.
And that was the needle threading that council staff was trying to, speak to, is trying to thread this needle in what was put forward here to avoid a relitigating and a reopening of everything, which I don't think would be appropriate in that sense.
I will say, we're using the use it or lose it in the context of this, but as we do this larger review of the pipeline, I do think we have to ask, one of the things I hope we explore and talk about is when you need to use it or use it in the larger sense of like when you need to, after the APF, like if for things that are really old, and there should be a carrot and a stick. I've talked about this of how long you can hold on to it and how many extensions you can get and for what reasons. But this is obviously a limited and different circumstance. So under that, I'm fine with it. Thank you for.
All right, let's vote. Thanks for fleshing that out. I think it was a good discussion. It sounds like we have sufficiently landed at agreeing with the council staff recommendation, which was in consultation with the planning department. Appreciate the work that was done to get there, to make sure that it was tailored in a way that everybody would be comfortable. And so with that, committee agrees with that staff recommendation.
And that was the last proposed amendment in the packet, unless there's any other questions.
Great. I don't see any colleagues with any other questions. I'll just thank colleagues for the thoughtful work. Previously, we spent a lot of time talking through this, so this was easy because the work was done in many ways beforehand, and even more than that, appreciate all of the work of planning and the implementation committee and the community. We worked really hard to ensure that this was done in a collaborative way. We implemented many of the recommendations and suggestions that public members and the implementation committee that very much makes up both the private sector and resident side of issues. And I will continue to reiterate planning's ongoing commitment to work together with the implementation committee, to work collaboratively with them. I think it's a really important group that brings very important perspectives to the forefront and allows for a really good and positive exchange between applicants, planning department, planning board, residents, and businesses. So I just want to reiterate that and thank you for that. And thank council staff for doing a lot of work to make this relatively easy discussion. So thank you to Ms. Nadeau and Ms. Dunn. With that, we will approve without objection 3-0 as amended. We have a ZTA that we will forward along to our colleagues on the full council. Thank you for being here. We're going to move on and switch gears to our next item on the agenda, which is a briefing on homeownership assistance programs. Just want to acknowledge and appreciate colleagues. We had quite a bit of a discussion on the homeownership programs during the budget. We want to make sure that we are doing a deeper dive outside of budget into these programs, both on the direct assistance programs and also on the counseling services. There was quite a bit of miscommunication and misunderstanding that we think we can improve. And so we decided to start right back, right after budget, first meeting to dig into these items as we had committed to do during the budget process, and really appreciate the fact that we have DHCA, we have HOC, we have some of our community partners from HIP and from LEDC who are part of these efforts to join us here to talk about these programs. And with that, unless council staff has any introductory comments, why don't we just turn it over to DHCA to begin, Ms. Cross, and we can go through your presentation, and then we can turn it over to partners as needed, and then get to HOC once we get through that.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Council Member. And for the record, Summer Cross, Chief of Housing, Department of Housing and Community Affairs. We were asked, as the council member just mentioned, to give an overview of the home buying process in Montgomery County. What are the tools that are available and how does that happen? Next. Any conversation about the home buying tools and processes needs to take it step by step. I thought it would be helpful to walk everybody here today, and especially those at home who might be watching and unfamiliar with the home buying process, through each of the many steps. This image on the screen actually comes from the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, of their 7 steps to their mortgage program. There are many, many lenders out there for a mortgage. Not everyone is going to have the same rules and requirements, but they all should generally have and follow these steps. HOC is another one of the partners that the county works with for our down payment assistance program. They are here today and will give some more information, but their process will be very similar to this as well. So next step. We'd like to start with, of course, the first step, and this is strongly encouraged and actually required for many mortgages for first-time home buyers, is the home ownership education and counseling step. What is required for most mortgage lenders of a first-time home buying process is a HUD-certified class. That is, the Federal Department of Housing oversees these programs and confirms that trainers and providers of this education essentially know what they're talking about. They also oversee what the agenda, what the course summary would be, and includes many topics that are important for first-time home buyers to understand. That can include the closing process and options for financing, home maintenance and responsibilities. Understanding what needs to be done to maintain a home can be very eye-opening for first-time home buyers, and a lot of this training course will explain those processes. There's also financial responsibilities and budgeting that comes with home buying, and understanding the different costs associated with owning a home versus renting a home. And then, of course, homeowners' rights and protections. Next. Now, it's hard to see, but these are screenshots from both HOC and DHCD's mortgage programs. And I've circled in red. You'll see that they list they have a link provided for both of those that links back to HUD site to find housing counseling providers. And this is a screenshot of what that HUD site looks like. You'll notice that there are only 2 housing counseling providers located in Montgomery County. That is the Latino Economic Development Center, LEDC, and Housing Initiative Partnership, HIP, both of whom are here today and will provide a lot more information about what it is that they do. Couple additional facts about first-time home buying courses. If it's HUD certified, it is usually an 8-hour class, so very, very extensive. It doesn't necessarily have to be 8 hours. It's 8 hours or equivalent. So the providers here today will give more explanation, but that 8 hours in their program associates training and classes with also one-on-one counseling. And the counseling can provide credit counseling, assistance with financial preparation to buy a home, increased awareness of what tools are out there, what the products are, and what those additional interest rates, qualification requirements, and so on might be with those financing tools. They can also provide some list of vetted professionals in the neighborhood to help in the home buying process. They can't necessarily recommend a single person, but they can provide a list of local community realtors, lenders, inspectors to help a home buyer be able to get started in that process. Additionally, these first-time home buying requirements are associated with the primary mortgage that the individual is going to be taking, and there are different requirements for that. So in the state of Maryland, their MMP program has a 1-year requirement. So you have to have taken this class at least 1 year prior to settlement, and in HOC, that's 2 years. So it is very common for people to take this first-time home buyer class multiple times. Next. There's been some questions, and just to clarify, the MPDU program also has a first-time homebuyer class. That is a contract with the Greater Washington Urban League. We put out an RFP, and Urban League was the winner of that selection. Urban League is a 8-hour, 100% virtual class, and all they do is talk about home buying, which is perfectly acceptable for the MPDU program. There's no one-on-one counseling provided at all with that program. However, we also have an agreement with them to do a first step, which is a 2.5-hour MPDU-specific class. The idea there is that anybody who's interested in purchasing an MPDU should understand the additional obligations and responsibilities of MPDU home ownership. Then they take an 8-hour home buyer class. Okay. So that's step 1. Step 2 is lender pre-approval. Again, HOC and DHCA or DHCD have a list of pre-approved lenders. Almost anybody can become a pre-approved lender, but they have to go through training and certify through each of the mortgage providers. The lender pre-approval is a statement from the lender that they're tentatively willing to provide you with a loan up to a certain amount. It helps in the home buying process to understand how much you can purchase. And it's not a deep dive into anyone's credit history or actual income, but based on more assumptions and general numbers. But it is enough guarantee that can help when an offer is made that the seller knows that there's a potential buyer to be able to finance up to the amount requested. Next. Step 3 is to find a realtor. The realtor should be, next, there you go. Someone who's very knowledgeable about the area. Every area is different. Should be somebody who can assist with first-time home buyers if it's a first-time home buyer. And recommendations, and someone who can work with easily. This is somebody you're going to be working with over the course of many months, who are going to answer a lot of very important questions. So finding somebody who you feel can answer those questions fully and in a way you can understand is very key. Recommendations can come from friends and family, the housing counseling providers I mentioned earlier, or just a simple Google search will list a number of different realtors. However, if you're using a Google search, I strongly recommend that anybody also interview multiple people, again, to find the right fit. Step 4, submitting an offer. So once somebody has found the right home in the right location with the right design, understand that it's someplace that the average homeowner in 2024 remains in for at least 8 years. In the DC area, the median time that homeowners retain their home is 12.5 years. So confirm that you can afford it for the right price and consider the conditions of the sale. When can you move in? Are there warranties, and will there be an inspection? While there's not a lot of requirements for inspection, it is strongly encouraged that everyone get an inspection to understand that there won't be any surprises when you purchase a home. At this point, there will also be a good faith deposit, which will depend on the individual contracts, but can be anywhere from 1% to 3% based of the offer price. Next, there's a loan application and lock. So now that you've found the home, you know the price, it's time to go back to the lender and actually get a loan lock. This can be the first lender that you got a pre-approval from, but it can also be any other lender. As you're shopping around, as you're talking to different realtors and counseling providers, you might learn of different lending opportunities and deals that you might be applicable for. It's still important to understand the terms of that loan and secure an interest rate that you can actually afford. Now, interest rates, of course, change every single day, so this loan lock is the opportunity to lock in what that loan interest rate will be for the remainder of your mortgage. That could be 15 or 30 years, depending on the term. This is also the point where the down payment assistance program is applied for. If you qualify, lenders will help direct you to the 3 programs that the county has, which we'll talk about later. All right, step 6 is Maryland Mortgage Program Review. So this is for, as I said, MMP according to this image, but this is an opportunity for the lender to take a deeper dive and make sure that you actually qualify for the mortgage. It's an opportunity really for them to assess the risk of providing such a huge debt to you and whether or not you can pay it off. And then finally, if everything goes well, you move on to closing, which is also known as settlement. It's once all the conditions of the sales contract have been met and once you've approved, your mortgage has been approved. This is the point where you sit down at the table for hours and hours and sign all the necessary paperwork and make sure that everybody who needs to get paid gets paid. But it's also, of course, the opportunity where you receive the keys to the home. Now, the state of Maryland only had 7 steps, but I'm going to add an 8th step to this requirement, and that is post-purchase counseling. So post-purchase counseling can happen at any time after you buy the home, but it's very important if, say, all your budgeting becomes difficult, you're having difficulty protecting and maintaining a home. There's a lot of additional assistance out there to help people to understand, again, those unusual things that people may or may not be aware of if they've only rented in their lives. So with that, we have 2 of our housing counseling providers here today, HIP and LEDC, who will be able to provide more information, especially about the counseling, pre- and post-counseling that they provide.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Friedson, Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez, Councilmember Jawando. My name is Mary Hunter, and I'm the Director of Housing Counseling and Services at Housing Initiative Partnership. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share a little bit about our homeownership counseling and education services that we provide in the county. Today I'll just talk about the homeownership challenges that we see and some of our strategies that we use to address those challenges, and tell you a little bit about some of the clients that we served last year. First of all, I'll start with who we are. We are an affordable housing developer and counseling agency founded over 35 years ago. We have offices in the Upcounty Regional Services Center in Germantown and in the city of Gaithersburg and in Hyattsville. Next slide. As I mentioned, we do housing development, so you see some nice pictures of our properties that we've developed. This is a multifamily development. We also provide resident services. We do single-family home acquisition and rehab and new construction of single-family homes for sale to first-time home buyers, low and moderate income first-time home buyers. Those are a couple of the houses that we've rehabbed. We always put a front porch on to create community feel for the houses that we work on. And we do some facade and home improvements and also weatherization. And I'll talk mostly today about our housing counseling and education services. We're a HUD-approved housing counseling agency. As Summer mentioned, we're audited every 2 years to make sure we're up to standards and have certified counselors on staff. The certified counselors took a very intensive training and then a test administered by HUD to gain that certification. So it's very important that whenever we recommend someone get counseling, we recommend they get counseling from a HUD-approved housing counseling agency with a certified counselor. So these are some of the services, the counseling services, rental, foreclosure, post-purchase financial capability. We also do homelessness prevention. We have the largest rapid rehousing program that's in Prince George's County. Here in Montgomery County, we have a great home sharing program in collaboration with DHHS. And we also run a financial empowerment center in the city of Gaithersburg in collaboration with the city of Gaithersburg. So I'll just address briefly some of the challenges that we see. Homeownership equity along race and ethnic lines is a real challenge I know that we've talked about, and there'll be folks on the panel that talk more about that today. And we see, that DPA, down payment assistance, can really address that challenge. And also housing counseling can address that challenge as well. Right now, the current housing market challenges we see are high interest rates, high home prices, low inventory, and we see with our clients some uncertainty and a lack of consumer confidence right now to get into the market. So I would identify that as a challenge for accessing home ownership. A lot of our clients, interestingly, we did a review of who we worked with, clients we've worked with pre-purchase counseling have great credit scores. However, there's debt and insufficient income to afford some of the houses here in Montgomery County, and so those are some of the challenges that we work on them with. Now I want to talk about challenges in the home ownership space. So this chart that you'll see is, we put together this chart from data from the Office of Financial Regulation, and it's a snapshot of foreclosure activity in Montgomery County over the last 4 years. Each of these bars are in May 2022, 23, 24, and 25. So starting, what you'll see with the blue bar is that is the notice of intent going out. So you can see really high notice of intent going out at the very beginning of the process, and it's kind of hard to tell the exact numbers. So, for example, in May 2022, 331 notices of intent went out in 2022. And in the year 2025, 538 notices of intent went out. And then you look at the orange bar, and that is the notice of foreclosure, meaning it's going to tell you there is a foreclosure sale happening. So you see, fortunately, there's a lot fewer notices of foreclosure than there are notices of intent. That means that housing counseling agencies and other people are helping, getting in there and making sure anyone who's experiencing default can resolve their issue before they get to that notice of foreclosure. And finally, the teeny tiny gray bar that's hard to see is the actual foreclosures that are registered with the Office of Financial Regulation. And that is, for example, in May 2022, there were 5, and in May 2025, there were 5. And this data is all available on the Office of Financial Regulation website. So obviously, we're seeing an uptick over the past 4 years of notices of intent. And, that's definitely something that we're concerned about, and that we want to make sure our presence is known to be helpful to those who are receiving those notices. And what we see among our clients is job loss, income reduction, and health issues, and death in household are the common reasons that people are experiencing mortgage default. So those are the challenges, and now I'll talk a little bit about our strategies to help the home buyers, and then I'll talk about the homeowners after that. The strategies that we use to help home buyers are 3: outreach, education, and counseling. Outreach, we do everything we can to be available to attend community events. We've tabled, I think, 13 community events last month. We work closely with constituent services staff of our council members, and we'd like to deepen that relationship this coming year. We have a lot of nonprofit partners and other government partners. We have a good real estate network of real estate professionals who refer to us when they are working with home buyers who need a little extra assistance. So those are some of the outreach tools that we use. And so what we do as part of our services are the group education that Summer sort of went through, our HUD housing counseling class. That's the certificate class, and it's facilitated by a HUD certified counselor. We have these monthly, either in-person or virtual. They're wonderful classes. I've been working with HIP for 17 years, and every time I go to a class, I learn something new. So it's chock full of information about the home buying process, which we know is super complex and, changes a lot. There are new developments that we cover in the class, and we invite real estate professionals. We always have a home inspector, a realtor, a lender, someone from a title attorney, and they're there to answer questions and really engage with the participants. It's a very interactive class. We do a homebuyer orientation, which is just 1 hour, and it's just a very general overview of the home buying process. A lot of people who go to the orientation will then go to the class to get more information. So that's the education piece. We do counseling, and that's the individual one-on-one with a HUD-certified counselor. The counselor will do a financial assessment of the client, look at their credit, look at their finances, do an estimate of how much they can afford to buy, address any issues that they need to maybe address on their credit, go over all the DPA, all the different down payment and closing cost assistance programs, different mortgage products that MMP has some really great ones. But it's very tailored to that individual and their needs. And we have a long-term commitment to those clients and work with them until they become mortgage ready. This can be a multi-year process for some clients, or it can be 6 months. It just depends on the client. For those that do need deeper work on their credit or savings or debt, we do have certified financial counselors that can work with them on those issues and have really great outcomes on that. So that's our home buyer strategies. Now talking a little bit about who we served last year, looking at the clients we served in calendar year 2024. 132 Montgomery County residents came to our home buyer education class. And as you can see, large majority of them were Black, Hispanic, and Asian. And 34 home buyers met for individual counseling with our housing counselors to become mortgage ready. And again, the demographics show that 93.6% identified as Black, Hispanic, or Asian. And I'll talk briefly about, there's a lot of words on this, but this is more for, referring to later. I won't go into all the detail, but strategies to preserve homeownership. It's not just about getting people into homes. It's about making sure people can sustain their mortgage and build long-term equity and build generational wealth. We care deeply about that. So we do a lot of outreach to make sure we reach homeowners in the county. And one piece of outreach that's a little different than the home buyer is that when a homeowner experiences default in their mortgage, they're going to get a lender default notice. And with that notice from their lender, thank goodness that Maryland has required that they include a list of all the housing counseling agencies in the state and how to contact the agencies. So they have an immediate connection with housing counselors. And then Department of Labor and Licensing also gets pinged when there's a default. They send out another notice to the homeowner, again encouraging them to seek counseling, again providing all the contact information for the agencies around the state. So we do get a lot of referrals that way for people who are in default. The foreclosure prevention counseling we provide is really very important. It's a complex process to navigate when you're in default, trying to find out how you can get help. And the lenders may have options, but you're not quite it's really difficult to access some of those options. So our counselors walk through that with anyone who's facing default. We also explain the foreclosure timeline, which is also kind of detailed, and there's various notice requirements along the way. So we look at those documents, make sure that the homeowner received all the notices that they should receive and are able to then perhaps opt into mediation, which is an option, but you have to opt in with your lender to try to come to a resolution. We will go to mediation with the homeowner to help them during the mediation. So those are some of the things we do with our foreclosure prevention counseling. And post-purchase also is really important. We do screening for homeowners tax credit. That's a very important resource for especially older homeowners who are on a fixed income, who have a property tax burden. Many of them don't know about the homeowners tax credit, so we screen them and we help them apply for that. So that helps reduce their housing burden. We also decide, we look to see if maybe home sharing is a good fit for homeowners who are having challenges. And or not, maybe they just want to age in place and they're looking for a roommate. We can connect them with a vetted renter of a room. So we engage in that matching process. And we also help the homeowners access energy assistance, home repair programs like Rebuilding Together and Habitat. So we connect as much as we can with any programs that might assist them. We also have home maintenance workshops. So who did we serve? What's the demographics of the clients that we served in 2024? We had We worked with 189 Montgomery County homeowners that were experiencing default, and 77.8 identified as Black, Hispanic, or Asian, and 47% are older adults. On the post-purchase side, we worked with 54 homeowners that were working on, just different housing issues like refinancing or issues with property taxes. And interestingly, the vast majority were older adults. A lot of those were applying for homeowner tax credit. Okay, so in conclusion, I just wanted to share some of the data that shows that housing counseling works. There was a report put together by HUD, and it's called Housing Counseling Works. It came out in January of 2023, and it included sort of a survey of all these different studies over the years to see what the impact of housing counseling was. And for example, one study showed that they looked at a study of like 18,000 pre-purchase clients and found that those who got pre-purchase counseling were 1/3 less likely to become delinquent once they got into a mortgage. So that preparation really helped down the line. Similarly, those who were in default, the Urban Institute study of 2014 showed that they were close to 3 times more likely to get a loan modification as compared with those homeowners in default who didn't get any counseling. And to conclude, and the final slide, I just wanted to let you know, I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but how we, sort of the history of housing counseling agencies in Montgomery County. In 2008, there were no local housing counseling agencies in the county. The foreclosure crisis was hitting really hard, and so DHCA reached out to neighboring jurisdictions, housing counseling agencies in neighboring jurisdictions, and invited those 3 housing counseling agencies to open offices here in the county. And that was HIP and LEDC and Home Free USA. We all moved into the county, opened offices, and began providing foreclosure prevention counseling to thousands and thousands of homeowners. And Montgomery County DHCA funded us from 2009 to 2019 to do that work. With the changeover, I think, in administration, the funding was lost. So as we were getting ready to start working to renew this funding, COVID hit, and we were able to use a lot of ARPA funds that came in to help housing counselors. So we really slotted in the ARPA funds to substitute for the lost county funds, and were able to continue providing the same level of services during those years. And then the ARPA funds sunset, and so we would like to express our gratitude to the County Council and for approving funding for FY26 to continue providing these services, and we're really looking forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're going to keep rolling through, and then we'll open it up and ask questions at the end, but I want to make sure everybody has time and doesn't rush through their presentations as we ask questions and make any comments we might make.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Awesome. Thank you so much for meeting with us today, and thank you for presenting on HIP, and just also you all for organizing the event today. My name is Sophia Darson. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of LEDC. I'm the Associate Director of Development. And again, just thank you for your partnership. And I'm excited to share a little bit of what we do. So today I'm going to tell you about our organization, as well as our team specifically dedicated to Montgomery County. Then we'll go into our housing counseling and how we structure our programs. Then my colleague here, Walda, Director of Housing, will speak regarding our history and our data of our housing counseling work in the county. And we'll talk a little bit about why it matters, especially right now. And then we can leave some room for questions. So LEDC, the Latino Economic Development Center, was founded in 1991 in DC. And we have since expanded in both geographic terms and also in who we serve. So we were founded in Columbia Heights, specifically serving Latinos, but we now have offices throughout the DMV and Puerto Rico, and we serve anyone who walks in our doors and needs our services. We are a nonprofit, community-based foundation, and we work towards economic development in whatever form that may look like. We are a CDFI, a Community Development Financial Institution, as well as a HUD-certified housing counseling agency. So here you have some of the locations of our offices. You can see we have an office in White Oak and Prosperity Drive. So our services, we do a lot of different things, but they're all aligned towards creating generational wealth for our clients. We mainly focus on two client paths. We have the entrepreneurial side, in which we do small business development as well as lending as part of our CDFI arm. So we help entrepreneurs start or grow their small businesses. And then we have the consumer side, which is where housing falls in. And here we really help homeowners or prospective home buyers at every stage of the journey, whether that be financial empowerment, if they need those foundational skills, towards the pre and post purchasing. Here I want to present a really knowledgeable housing team dedicated to the county. So I'm joined by Walda, Director of Housing Services, and Karen, our Maryland Housing Counseling Manager. We also have a housing education manager and coordinator that work in the county. So like I mentioned, we're a HUD-certified housing counseling agency. We have been since 2004. And like my colleague here explained, we are audited every 2 years to make sure that we are aligned and compliant with all the regulations. And in terms of our counseling, we structure it similarly as pre, post-purchase, and then we also have that very important foreclosure prevention. I'm not going to go super into depth with this because, of course, my colleague here just shared a lot of similarities, but want to reiterate that our pre-purchase is really focused on educating and guiding clients through being homeownership ready, budgeting, credit building, and then we have our post-purchase, which really focuses on responsible homeownership and helping protect their assets. And then the foreclosure prevention is navigating during hardship, so really making sure that we can help them with budgeting or referring and guiding them through complex legal proceedings. And I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Walda to talk a little bit more in detail about our work in the county.
Okay. Good afternoon. Walda John with the Latino Economic Development Center. I'm the Housing Programs Director, being with LEDC since 2006. I'm being able to help the communities in Montgomery County since we did the expansion back in 2008 to help the community face the foreclosure crisis. In that time, between 2008 to 2019, we received funding from Montgomery County in partnership with the HED, Maryland DHED, to help the community with housing counseling services. Since that time, we've been able to develop collaborations and a strong partnership with different nonprofit organizations in the county to serve their clients and receive referrals from them and help the community to continue their path to become homeowners. As you can see in this graphic and with these numbers, this is the impact that we were able to create last year, fiscal year 24, with our services, education services, individual counseling. We were able to support 14 households to avoid foreclosure, and 17 households were able to become homeowners. They received different down payment assistance, and also, in addition of that, our own down payment assistance program that LEDC has in partnership with the Revitalization Division in Maryland DHED. So we are able to provide down payment assistance in Montgomery County. And also, as you can see, we serve different communities. We serve, our niche is serving the Latino community, but our doors are open to serve all communities. Our classes are in English and in Spanish, and we also provide interpretation if there is a need of other language. And why it's important to invest in housing counseling, especially with today's political environment and the situation that we are right now. We know that, and also with the investments that are happening in the county, such as the Purple Line corridor, we know that housing prices are going up with this development. According to numbers that we were able to find, single-family homes are going up 12%, and multifamily rentals are going 9.2% up. And also we know that we have the crisis right now with federal employees being laid off. So we want to be there and be a support for these families in the case that they need to navigate the process with their servicers, because they don't provide that service for homeowners. They refer them to housing counseling agencies. So we want to be there and be that support that they need. And there is also information about the county demographics. As all of us know, 3.7% are white, 20.9% are black, and 21% are Hispanic or Latinos. Continue to briefly describe, Mary already explained how we work, what we do with prospective first-time home buyers. We are the partner with them that we don't have any interest in this process, right? Loan officers have an interest, realtors have an interest because they are gonna get a commission, but we are the neutral party helping them work through the process and understanding this very complicated process, especially if we are talking about foreigners or newcomers or members from the Latino community. They don't know about the home buying process. So we are there for them. And according to HUD, as you can see in this graphic, those who receive pre-purchase counseling are likely to stay in their homes longer, be familiar with purchasing requirements, and have a reduced delinquency. And we like to say that we help them to make an informed decision so they can be successful homeowners down the road. And if we are talking about the importance of post-purchase counseling or foreclosure prevention counseling, we also have information from the Urban Institute here that shows how homeowners can receive different options to keep their asset and protect their investment. So we were talking also about foreclosure prevention counseling and the importance of this type of service that is available for all the communities in the county. And as you can see here, we find out that it says that 1 additional hour of counseling can reduce in at 10% the risk of foreclosure. And 8 additional hours of counseling can reduce in at 50% the risk of foreclosure, which is really important for us to know and to be able to talk about why it's important to invest in housing counseling. We brought some recommendations about other programs that have been helpful for first-time home buyers or homeowners. For example, in DC, we had 2 different programs that has been very successful. One of them is the Homebuyer Tax Abatement Program. It is a program that allows first-time home buyers to avoid property taxes payments for the first 5 years. So that gives first-time home buyers the time to get used to their new responsibilities and have a little bit of savings. So we advise our clients that that amount that they will be paying in property taxes, that they put in an emergency savings fund, so they can start building that emergency fund as homeowners. The other program that we have seen that is very supportive with first-time home buyers is the DC Senior Citizen or Disabled Property Owner Tax Relief that helps homeowners 60 years or older to save 50% of their property taxes. And a point that we would like to also share with you is that in other jurisdictions like DC, Baltimore City, housing counseling and education is a requirement to obtain down payment assistance. And lastly, we wanted to include, continue with the idea that why is important housing counseling. For confidentiality purposes, we are not including the whole name of our clients here, but as you can see, my colleague, Karen Torrico, who is the manager of the program in Maryland, helped this couple that they were laid off. They were federal employees and they were laid off, and they didn't know what to do to keep their $4,500 monthly mortgage payment. So with the assistance of Karen, they were able to create a plan, contact the servicer, and find an option for them. They are still struggling with less income in the household at the moment, but they are in the path of finding a solution or saving their property. And as Mary already shared with us, we have been noticing that the NOEs are on track to be higher than previous years. So notice of intent to foreclosure are going out every day in a higher number than previous years. Thank you for the opportunity to share this information with you.
Would you like to continue with the down payment assistance discussion or stop here for some questions?
Let me check in with colleagues. I think we're good to continue. Let's continue with down payment assistance.
Then I'm going to give an overview and ask, we have representatives from DHCD come up. All right. So thank you, Naeem. I'm going to talk about the county's 3 continually funded down payment assistance programs. I'm going to call them by their acronyms, but I'll say off their full titles now. Montgomery Homeownership Program, MHP, which is administered by the State Department of Housing and Community Development. The Montgomery County Homeownership Assistance Fund, MCHAF, that is administered by our Housing Opportunities Commission. And MedPal, which is the Montgomery Employee Down Payment Assistance Loan, again administered by the state. So while all 3 are, I'm calling them down payment assistance programs, they're often known as DPAs. The 3 programs that the county runs works for down payment and closing costs. So even though we're saying down payment, it also includes closing costs. And just again, for the folks at home, the down payment is the difference between the sales price and your mortgage amount. And closing costs are those various fees and costs paid at settlement that include insurance, a variety of types, additional fees, lender, escrow, paying all the people who got you to the table, as well as property taxes. Next. So again, hard to read, but the 3 programs have similar yet slightly different terms. I mentioned who already partners with them. They are tied to the first mortgage product type of DHCD and HOC. So essentially, if you're going to get this down payment, you're going to be signed up for their mortgage programs. The 3 programs are currently set with a maximum up to $25,000 a loan. MHP and MCHAF are 40%, no greater than 40% of the borrower's income. MedPal happens to be a flat $25,000, and if you don't need the full $25,000 for your down payment assistance, it goes to pay down your principal. As I mentioned, it's tied to the mortgage, which changes daily, but I took a screenshot of the mortgage rates as of last week, and you can see all three. The primary mortgage would be somewhere around 6.7% to 7.5%, depending on some additional terms that you would receive. MHP and MedPal are both for 30 years. MedPal is forgiven if you continue to remain in your home after 30 years, but for both of those, the down payment would not be due back unless you sold your property or refinanced. It's a 0% interest rate, so really you never have to pay this off until the end. The McHalf program is a 10-year forgiven loan, so if you're staying in your property for full 10 years, that's forgiven. None of these are revolving loans. They will be returned to the county upon repayment. So when somebody does sell or refinance, the money will come back to the state or to the county. However, we've not received any of them back, so people are still remaining in their homes. The oldest program is MHP, which was created in 2017. So we have people who bought their home in 2017 still staying in that home. Next. To qualify, again, there's a little bit slightly different terms. All of them are first-time home buyers, so meaning that you may not have owned a home for the prior 3 years, and that comes, all three of them come with a first-time home buyer class that we just discussed earlier. The incomes are again tied to the mortgage, which are a little bit different. MHP, I have the numbers up there, but for 2025 means that one or two person household makes less than $196,000 a year. MedPal, however, is tied to 120% of AMI, which is equivalent to our workforce housing program. So there are different rates depending on your household size, also provided on the screen. There are a few other minor qualifications, again, tied to the first mortgage. Of course, MedPal being an employee program means that you have to have at least one household member who is an employee of the county, an employee of its specific unions and or non-union represented individuals of the various departments of the county, and also MCPS union members. There in the MedPal program, it does require a contribution of 1% of the sales price, and let's see, MHP and McHalf both have a cap on the total cost of the home. Now, in the next few slides, take all three of our down payment assistance programs and provide some data about all three together to give a general direction of who we're serving overall with the programs. I have representatives here from the state's program and HOC who are going to give a lot more details about their individual programs. Okay, so you can see the first slide, overwhelmingly, these down payment assistance are providing to households who are earning less than 70% of AMI. That seems to be the direction of most of the loans. The next one does break it down. You can see by breaking it down, some of our products are serving a little bit higher income brackets than other products. It's specifically the MHP and MedPal tend to serve a little bit higher AMI, whereas HOC's McHalf program is serving more of our lower income families. Next. The primary age bracket for most of our down payment assistance are 30 to 40-year-olds, and I found this interesting. The primary borrower identifies as female in more cases than not. The household size. Next. Most of these are going to 1 and 2 people households. So it's really a lot of starter homes, getting people into homes as they're single and just beginning their families. Racial breakdown, the majority identify as Black, non-Hispanic, with the second category being white. But when we take that information and compare it to census tract information, you'll see that while our criteria for all the down payment assistance programs are neutral, when looking at the results, we're providing a bulk of the assistance to historically disadvantaged groups at a higher percentage or close to equal proportion of their distribution to the county population. The majority of unit types that we are providing is condos. It's interesting, we do not track condo fees, but a lot of these 1 and 2 person households are buying condominiums. Second in majority would be for townhomes, which is shown in gray. The smaller bars and pie wedge is single family standalones. Looking at the distribution of the county, you see that these down payment assistance loans are going all over the county to provide homeownership opportunities all across this area. Primarily, though, we're seeing majority in Silver Spring, with the second area being Germantown and third Gaithersburg. As far as the funding distribution, most of our down payment assistance loans are within the first couple of months after the program gets up and going every year. So we fund it as the new fiscal year begins in July. It takes about a month to ramp up. So between August and, say, January or February of every year, we've been spending down most of the programs. You'll notice FY24 went out much longer because that had an additional allocation of ARPA funds, so we had double the amount to spend that year, and it went all the way through that fiscal year. Next. We are beginning to see a trend. So as I mentioned, the down payment and closing costs are covered with this. Down payments under any other program could be between 3 to 20%. However, with the programs that we're operating, they're tied to mortgages that are limited to about 3 to 3.5%. In addition, the closing costs, you would need, say, 4 to 6%. It's hard to determine based on the sales price, but overall, most purchasers would need about 10% of the sales price for both down payment and closing costs. And as you see in the last column on the right, that requires more than the $25,000 that we're providing in the down payment assistance. It's also interesting from this table, the average sales price for all three of the programs are under $400,000, most between $300,000 to $400,000. The average sales price in Montgomery County in 2024 was higher than $600,000, say $605,000. So these are definitely first-time homebuyer, likely resale units for that price. Again, this goes back to most of the borrowers are now taking the full $25,000 allowed. I did break this out into MHP and McCaff to see the difference. About 87% in the past year have taken the full MHP $25,000. In McCaff, it's closer to, say, 70% of the borrowers, but they are an increasing number of people taking the full amount. And then the last point, I know we get a lot of questions about how are these being promoted. All three of our down payment assistance programs are knowledge-based answers on the county website. They will redirect individuals who are going to the county to either the state or HOC's funding sites where all the much more detail about the different mortgage programs and down payments are provided. DHCA also has a lot of flyers that we provide for the three down payment assistance programs, which we provide at any kind of table that DHCA might be sitting at, budget discussions, panels, etc. MedPal is a little more specific because it is a county employee program. So DHCA has worked with both the county's HR department and MCPS's HR department. It is published on the HR benefits and pay site, which you can see here where I've highlighted where that's linked. HR does talk about it with new employee orientation discussions. They have annual liaison conversations that they promote this to make sure that HR liaisons in different departments are also promoting it. It's included in recruitment materials to try to bring employees to Montgomery County to say we have this wonderful option available. MCPS, they will put it on their pay stubs on a regular basis, I've been informed, and they re-advertise with new funding and also work with their unions regularly. Now, through conversations recognizing that we could boost our marketing, we've also, DHCA has been having conversations with various unions, and there is a plan to provide it on McGeo's regular newsletter to promote it as well. So with that, I will turn it over to DHCD to give a little information about their programs.
Wonderful, thank you. Hello, good afternoon, committee chair, committee members. I'm very honored. Thank you for having me here. I think I'm presenting, this is like second time. I've been here a couple of years ago. And my name is Maddie Siulu. I'm the director of Maryland Mortgage Program in Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. Just before I forget, a shout out to the counseling agencies. They're just amazing. They work, we have a strong partnership with them throughout the state. They helped a lot home buyers as well as homeowners. and because I manage the Maryland Mortgage Program, but I also manage the Maryland Homeowner Assistance Fund. There was the $250 million allocated by the Treasury to the state of Maryland, and we worked really, really hard and really close with the counseling agencies. That being said, thank you so much, Summer. You just made a great presentation for your first half of it, as well as the second half, with how Maryland Mortgage Program works. So I'll try not to really be redundant, not to repeat too much, just give you an overview of the Maryland Mortgage Program, very general, and also where the MHP and MATPEL fall into that picture. So Maryland Mortgage Program is the flagship program of the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. Has been it's been active for over 40 years. Offers competitive interest rates, stability, flexibility. Is a 30-year fixed rate home loan program. We're targeting low to medium income home buyers. We have a range of assistance of options for down payment and closing cost. And our loans are both government and conventional. Government meaning FHA, VA, USDA insured, and conventional loans, so Fannie and Freddie loans as well. They are the investors. We work with an approved network of over 120 lenders statewide. They're represented. We have loans in every single jurisdiction, county and jurisdiction in the state. All our loans are serviced by U.S. Bank. Generally, all loans are mortgage-backed securitized, so that's why our investors, the government, and Fannie and Freddie are instrumental in purchasing all the loans that we issue. More than 98% of MMP borrowers are first-time home buyers. We also allow repeat home buyers. I just have a diagram. I'm not going to go through every product, but just to give you an idea of the wide array of offerings we have. So we have from the lowest rate that we offer, the lowest rate of all our products. That's the one with no DPA. It's up to anybody to choose either that or DPA starting from $6,000, DPA down payment assistance from $6,000 to 3%, 4%, 5%, 6% down payment assistance, and that's specific for home buyers with income below 50% AMI. And we also have a very special designated area for so-called specialty products. Those were Maryland Smart Buy. I'm going to mention a few words about it in the next couple of slides. And Maryland Home Mobility. So Smart Buy is the program assisting homebuyers with student debt. Maryland Home Mobility assisting homebuyers with disabilities, and products with partner-funded DPA, and that's where the MHP and MATPEL falls under. We're starting the 10th. We'll be starting the 10th year of collaboration with Montgomery County next year. We had in the past collaboration with various jurisdictions. We had a Greenbelt program that ended last year. In the past, we worked for a few years also with Baltimore City, Baltimore County. We work very closely with Prince George's County through their Pathway to Purchase, which I think it's $25,000. They're going to double it to $50,000 down payment assistance. They manage their own funding. We're working together in terms of marketing, outreach, promoting, consulting each other. But they have their own ways to manage the funding. They tried many times, to replicate the great structure we have here with Montgomery County. They just couldn't get all the approvals in place for that. So hopefully, we've been trying that for quite a few years. Hopefully, eventually they'll be able to do that. That they think that would be ideal for them. But and we also offer a few options for repeat home buyers as well. And on top of that, we have the so-called partner match products that actually adds up $2,500 in down payment assistance to match dollar per dollar the contribution of our partners being employers, real estate developers, builders, government programs as well. I mentioned that I'll just speak a little bit about Smart Buy. You probably are aware it's been out there. It's been successful for 10 years now. It helped almost more than 1,400 borrowers eliminate $41 million in student loans. Borrowers who use that opportunity to move and move into their homes, their first-time home buyers. Just in Montgomery County, in the 10 years, we assisted 126 households paying over $4 million worth of student debt loans and leveraging almost $40 million in mortgages under this program. All the details are on our website. It became a national model. It inspired other states. Quite a few states, counties reached out to us to try to launch similar initiatives. Sorry. Just in a nutshell, the structure of Smart Buy consists in the first mortgage, a conventional loan of 97% of the sales price. The second loan, which is the forgivable portion, that's the portion covering the student debt, that's capped at $20,000. It used to be higher in the past, but because of last allocation that we received from the State General Assembly, we had to lower it to $20,000 in order to make sure we assist as many borrowers as possible. And that's one of the options. We also talked to various jurisdictions to see if we can collaborate on, so to have other jurisdictions participate in this program. And then it has the third loan, which is a mortgage down payment assistance, could be $6,000 or 6% for borrowers with income below 50% area median income. Just a quick comparison to show where we are, where the statewide family income and CDA or MMP, a family income, which is very close to each other. You can see the green and blue lines that are so far away from the purchase price, median purchase price in the state. I'm sure that's no surprise to anybody. So the home purchase prices increased along with the market, but incomes stayed relatively flat. And that really had a significant impact on affordability. As an idea, over 55% of MMP borrowers have income below 80%, and almost 84% of MMP borrowers use down payment assistance. The numbers are so comparative to the ones you presented for all your programs. Just looking at Montgomery County and Maryland Mortgage Program, and close to half of the population represents Black and Hispanic home buyers. The rest consist of Asian, white, others, and a lot of them did not provide data as well. So all these numbers, the percentages represent the ones who provided the data. The second slide is just kind of detailing the exact ethnicity breakdown, race ethnicity breakdown for the two programs each. MMP just where is the highest production in the county, by county, sorry, in the state. As you can see, Baltimore City was one of the top performers, of course, and Prince George's County and Montgomery County as well. Those are the areas very highly serviced by Maryland Mortgage Program. Going now down in details to Montgomery Homeownership Program, MHP. It's been, as I said, it's finished. It's ending its 9th year of operation, so it's ready to start the 10th year next month. Just a few stats. The average borrower income is almost $92,000. It's about $10,000 more than it was last year. they used almost everybody used the top $25,000. The program usually ends, or the allocation is spent usually within the first half of any fiscal year, so it kind of ends at the beginning of the calendar year. So January, February, we have to close the program and just all wait for July. So that's what's happening right now as well. For MatPal is a different situation because of the requirements that the buyers be county employees. In terms of cities in the county, just as Somerset, Gaithersburg, Germantown, and Silver Spring are the ones with the, I guess, highest density of population, as well as the highest utilization of these programs. Marketing and business development, I know there was a specific question or of interest for that would impact how well these two programs are known, MHP and then MatPal. So as I mentioned, we work throughout the state. So our outreach marketing is done throughout the state consistently. We have over 120 lenders. They have branches in every county statewide. So the entire state is aware of your programs, not just anything that's not that organizations or events in Montgomery County. This is going throughout the state and leverages also our relationship with other counties as well, because everybody's interested. Okay, then how can we copy that structure? How can we do the same thing? Not many are really fortunate to get approvals, internal approvals to move on with that, or otherwise, for sure, there would be more similar programs with various jurisdictions. We also work very closely, of course, with the industry partners because, as I said, all our loans are serviced by U.S. Bank. We're on the board of Maryland Mortgage Bankers and Brokers Association. We work with the Maryland Realtors and, of course, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, private mortgage insurers, housing counselors, we have affiliate memberships with local realtor associations. They are all stakeholders in our program and partners. We also have advertising and columns in association magazines like Maryland Realtors, Coastal Association of Realtors. Then training and exhibiting is extremely active because we have to do monthly training with our lenders, with real estate agents, with again all the participants in our programs. We exhibit, speak at annual events. For example, in fiscal 2024, our team participated in 239 events and shared information with 7,500 participants. For example, this week, my colleagues are coming to Montgomery County to an AACP event that's going to happen, I think, in a couple of days here. Advertising and social media, digital, radio, transit marketing campaign. You have pictures, an example, an ad on a bus. The same ad is also on the bus stop. Social media presence, almost daily announcements on Facebook, X, Instagram, regular press releases, ads, pictures from the events we go to, radio spots, various campaigns for homeownership months, affordable housing, back to school, Christmas, various occasions, full marketing campaigns with sports focus, like Baltimore Orioles, local baseball teams, University of Maryland Terrapins. We in 2024, fiscal 2024, we received over 1,300 engagements and reached over 26,000 social media users. Just pictures of the Orioles stadium banner and the ramp up of Homeownership Month. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you so much for having us here. My name is Chelsea Andrews. I'm the president of HOC, and you've heard a lot of information around home ownership programs. We will try to be brief with our presentation, just high-level information. Our website also has all of this information for the public as well, hocmc.org. Next slide. Just as an overview, we're going to just share some information about the organization, as well as the programs that we have for home buyers, as well as the programs that we have for our own specific customers. Next slide. For those who may not be familiar, HOC is an organization that allows and provides support from all spectrums of continuous support for our residents in this county. This slide shows our focus on our strategic plan, our efforts to expand affordable housing in the county, to enhance the lives we touch, and to excel as a world-class organization. And our mission is really to provide support for those who are low and moderate income in the county. Next slide. We do that a number of ways. We are the public housing authority for the county. We administer close to 8,000 vouchers. We provide resident services, permanent supportive services, and we have a nonprofit. We also are the housing finance agency, and this is where we're able to provide down payment assistance and first-time home buyer mortgage that you'll hear more about. And we're a developer, the largest in this county, with over 9,400 rental units. Next slide. I'm here with a number of my colleagues. To my left, I have Kareem Brown, our Senior Executive Vice President. To her left, we have Vice President Michael Somerville. He's the Vice President over our Mortgage Finance Program. And to his left, we have Ken Silverman, the Vice President of Government Affairs. I will turn it over to Mike Somerville to provide an overview of the Mortgage Purchase Program.
Great. Thank you, President Andrews, and thank you, council members. The Mortgage Purchase Program run by HOC has several components to it, and they're very similar to what you've heard from the other organizations. Our first is our first mortgage product, which is FHA and conventional products through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. 30-year fixed rate term. We have two options, one that uses the McCaff and the revolving closing cost program. The other one, option 2, uses the HOC Purchase Assistance Program as well as the revolving closing cost program. We do approve our own lenders. We have 30 lenders approved into our mortgage purchase program. We present to our commission for approval, and they're required to go through a specific training program that we offer, and we do remedial training on a regular basis, 6 to 8 training sessions per year. In terms of the other down payment assistance and closing cost assistance programs on this page, the most popular is the McCaff program. We exhaust all funds each year that are provided to us by the county. We do, on an average basis, issue literally 60 to 80 loans per year under that. With the Housing Purchase Assistance Program, it's less utilized. We do few loans under that program because it has a certain limitation, 3% of the sales price. The one thing that is nice about it is deferred for the first 5 years and then forgivable after that point. Next slide, please. This is a quick summary of our activity. And I'll focus in on fiscal year 25. To date, we've issued $28,800,000 in first-time loans in the county. We've closed 101 loans. And as you can see, our average purchase price and mortgage amounts are very similar to the rest of the presentations you've received earlier. Next slide, please. And I'll turn it over to Ken.
Good afternoon, council members. Ken Silverman, Vice President of Government Affairs. We did a little bit of number crunching just to be able to share with you a better sense of who our programs are serving. A lot of this, kind of echoes what was in DHCA's presentation. They really did a great job. So we'll kind of hit the highlights and just sort of point out where anything's a little bit different. But again, showing our demographics compared to the county at large. Next slide, please. Here we're showing the purchase price of HOC assisted homes through our mortgage purchase program versus the average listing price over the last 5 years in the county. So that comes from a Realtor.com index. And the key thing there is the sort of average price of homes in the county has increased about twice as fast over the past 5 years as the purchase price for the customers that we're serving. Next slide, please. Same story for income. So here is the borrower income over the last 5 years compared to the area median income. And again, the AMI has increased about twice as fast as the income of our borrowers. So the sort of effective AMI of the families that we're serving has fallen. Next slide, please. So here we did, similar to what Summer did, analysis of the geographic distribution. We did go quite a bit farther back. So we pulled all the way back to 2012, a total of about 1,600 purchases that we've been able to assist over that time. Would highlight a little over half have been in Gaithersburg, Germantown, or Clarksburg, in those sort of faster growing up-county areas. And then the rest, a couple areas of concentration, but fairly evenly distributed around the county. Next slide, please. Again, this echoes what Summer showed, that vast majority of folks are purchasing either condos or townhomes. Again, this does go a little bit further back, so we pulled 10 years of our data to show this distribution here. Next slide, please. All right, and now I'm going to turn it back to Mike to talk about the programs we have for our customers.
Next slide, please. So HOC offers a variety of programs in the form of education. The first is our financial literacy program, which is through our HOC Resident Services Division, which is designed to provide both one-on-one as well as workshop-level education opportunities. To give you an idea, since March of this year, they've conducted 60 one-on-one counseling sessions as well as one workshop that involved a larger group. This is designed to help people really understand their finances, improve their credit scores, and enhance their ability to maintain and operate a house. HOC Single Family Division, we offer homeownership programs as well for our HOC residents, which includes the same type of credit counseling and other elements that you see in the HUD-designated counseling program. Ours, however, is a little more abbreviated. It's a 4-hour session, and those participants do receive a certificate that they can use as they approach lenders. Next slide, please. So our family self-sufficiency program is really geared, and it's authorized through HUD, and it's designed for residents receiving vouchers or living in HUD-financed housing projects. Now, our program has 372 families participating in it at this time, and they're provided a interest-bearing escrow account that basically builds up and allows them to have a funds toward the purchase of a home at a later date. Next slide, please. And the last is our HOC home ownership program, or HOC, as we call it. It's open to all residents in our HOC-owned or affiliated developments with income of around $40,000 per year. A certain number of MPDUs are reserved for purchase by HOC residents. Over the last 5 years, we've had 95 units reserved for HOC residents, and 55 of those were actually closed into purchases. So a conversion rate about 58% among our tenants, or our residents. HOC monitors these accepted units through settlement, and if the borrower receives MPP financing. And subject to stringent federal regulation, voucher holders may convert their voucher into a home ownership. And that's all the comments I have on our education and program.
Thank you. We're open for any questions you may have.
Great. Well, we have the rest of the group on standby, so we'll call you up as needed and find a microphone. I'll turn it over to colleagues first for questions, but I'll first just express appreciation to everybody for a lot of work and a lot of efforts to put forward these presentations. Obviously, there's a lot happening and a lot of work that is going into it. I think some of the challenges connecting the resources to the folks and making sure there are enough resources there. That's a conversation that we had a robust discussion about during the budget. The funds for the assistant program, we doubled it. They were expended about halfway through the year. They're still expended about halfway through the year, which means that once the funds are used, people stop applying because they know that there's no money there. And the team stops advertising that there are funds available for first-time home buyers because there aren't funds available for first-time home buyers until the next iteration of funding. It's why many of us have been advocating to provide more resources specifically for these homeowner assistance programs. I have a few questions, but I'll turn it to colleagues first before I ask mine. Any questions of colleagues? Councilmember Joanda? Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, that was comprehensive, and do not take the fact that we waited till HOC. We're going to have you come back up. Don't worry. So there's, and we might have some musical chairs here just because of the, as was said by the chair, because of the seats. Just want to reiterate thanks. There's a lot happening here, and my first set of questions is kind of related to, and I will start with HOC since you're sitting here, and then I'll ask the others. But is the demand, right? So you have two sides of the coin here. You know, HOC, obviously, you are serving your customers, and you have your discrete programs. Demand for the counseling services, and then demand for the home ownership, the actual fund money. And what are you seeing? Do you have a sense of what the actual demand is? Is it like Chair Friedson said, where people are just stopping because they know it's going to run out? And this would be a similar question we have for other folks. What's your best sense of what the actual demand is for the services? Does that make sense?
I think you could go ahead and answer this, Mike. I know you have numbers as it pertains to how many people are currently in our program, and also how quickly we're able to expend the funds.
And if you're turning people away, and if so, when's that happening, or what's the wait? Is there a wait list for the wait list? I know you're taking people off the wait list to give the services to, but there might be two wait lists.
The challenge for this, unlike other programs like voucher, there is no wait list because you either can purchase a home and you have the resources to purchase it, or you can't. You're not going to, because one of the challenges that we have with this whole program is it's not like we can line up a capital stack for a potential buyer to then send them out into the market to find a house. It's like very quick. They're competing in a regular marketplace, and while they are obtaining, private financing, their lender may know that they're qualified for one of these public programs. They stack it all together, and they either can make it work or they can. I mean, the challenge that we have is when the folks are ready to purchase, they either have it or they don't, and that runs into the issue. This has been like the ongoing rub that we've talked about together on this committee and the previous iteration of the committee, and why it's hard to know what the demand is, because there are folks that aren't even out purchasing a home because the funds aren't available, or their lender doesn't come and apply for it because they know that the funds were already expended.
Yeah, and I think it's a little different for the counseling services in that you might know, or an HOC resident, I want to buy a home, right? You might not know where to start. You might not know if you have enough money. So you could seek assistance to get into one of those programs. So I'm trying to, but certainly if you're ready to buy a home and you need the money right away, that's a different category. There's probably multiple categories of people here. that would be in the process, and I'm just trying to get a sense of the various categories. Yeah.
So,
I got you in. I'm always trying to get the person who didn't speak in. Yeah, there you go.
good afternoon, and for the record, I'm Kayreen Brown, Senior Executive Vice President. So for HOC's program, just to clarify, there are two categories of borrowers. First, there are those who apply for access to our homeownership program, the HOC-HOP, and then there's the market at large. So anyone in the marketplace can apply for a loan through our program. And then there are those who apply to participate in the homeownership program, of which there are 500 of those on our applicant list. And those apply to gain access to purchase one of our MPDUs that become available to us. We're entitled to a third of the MPDUs that are made available. So there's that category, and then there are the market at large who can apply for one of our loans and can go through the counseling process and apply for a loan. And if they're qualified, eligible, we take them through the process. And so both groups apply and make their way through the process and have access to closing cost funds. And when that runs out, it runs out, and typically when interest rates are higher, as they are now, we see the demand taper off. And that's, again, that's what we're experiencing now. When rates are low, it's a little bit different. And so once the McCAF funds, as Mike explained, there are three categories of closing costs and down payment assistance funds. McCAF obviously is the most attractive. It gives the biggest bang for the buck. And once that runs out, the others are not as attractive, but they're available and can be combined. And so, if folks have a little bit more in terms of their own personal resources, they can also tap into those funds. But again, once closing costs, down payment assistance run out, then the demand for our loan funds taper off.
And just add to that, we exhaust the McCAF funds in about 5 to 6 months at the outside. It goes very quickly. We have our lenders are constantly asking, do you know when you'll be receiving your McCAF allocation?
So very similar to what we've seen in the other programs, about halfway through the year or less. And to the point that you kind of alluded to my second question, which was, is the amount enough given where we are, and how do we? This is always a question, right? It's 25.
The amount of the grant.
The amount of the assistance.
Yes, there's the total aggregate amount available in the fund, and then there's the per recipient.
It is huge for somebody who has nothing to start with.
Sure, yeah.
The more, the better, obviously. But having added a little bit more, we think it goes a long way to making more homeowners. And obviously, if it can be increased in any way, we're able to make a big impact to folks who are first-time home buyers who...
Could I add on? Because I think the main question, because I think we've always kind of had this question, if and as more funds are available, should we be able to do that? And I'll continue to advocate because I think we ought to add more funds. I wanted to see more funds during this budget. We'll continue to push for that. Would it be better to increase the amount as we do that, or to not do that so that we can increase the number of people who benefit? Is 25,000 enough? And we've seen a somewhat consistent, my sense of it, looking at what your data says, is that we should keep it relatively close to what it is, maybe bump it up a little, but the focus really should be on expanding to more people, because the sales price of the condo and the townhome has stayed relatively consistent. I will note condo prices, particularly older condos in Montgomery, not new construction condos, but condo prices in Montgomery County have not increased at the level that single-family homes have, or anywhere close. The skyrocketing home prices are really new construction broadly, and specifically single-family homes, not necessarily new construction single-family homes, but single-family homes in general. Those two categories have seen huge increases for lots of different reasons: supply and demand, supply chain, labor, et cetera. But your data shows a relatively consistent across that 10-year period.
Right. Right, and our data also shows that there's a success rate with the $25,000. And so we just had this conversation ourselves in terms of the additional allocation. What our recommendation would be is to serve more families versus increase the amount. There are definitely a lot of individuals and families that are seeking this support, and so being able to provide and touch more families. And you saw in 24 in our data, there was a spike in terms of the number of families we were able to serve when we had the extra McCaff funding versus the following year when we did not. And so we do believe that maintaining 25,000 but serving more families would be the route to go in this circumstance.
That's helpful. I see nodding from partners in the back. I don't know if any of you, I know these questions are kind of applicable to you. Do you have anything you want to add? Okay. Well, no, if you just maybe swap out with someone.
Yeah. We'd be happy to.
Any more questions for you all?
Yeah.
No, I just, based on the data that was presented today, that seems like the right course. If there's demand and it's working for the population that we're looking to serve, it would be great to have more of it to extend it throughout the rest of the year for our home buyers.
Yeah, I mean, I could just speak to, my first home purchase was under $300,000, older condo, $25,000 towards the down payment and the closing costs for that purchase would have dramatically changed that entire process. So, I mean, that makes sense to me that, if you're talking about at that, at that level. And, I think up until the point at which we have funds that aren't getting expended because people say there's just not enough there to put me across the finish line to make this purchase doable, I think expanding to more people within reason seems to be the better course. If we get to the point, I hope we do, at some point where we have some funds that just don't get expended a little bit, and hopefully not a lot, but a little bit, because it just seems like we have run out of folks, who this would benefit, and people say eventually this just is not enough to get me across the finish line to make this a financially feasible transaction. That would seem to make sense.
Yes. No, I appreciate that, and I think the other part of this question, please stay a while here, is the fact that, I forget whose slide, I think it was Ms. Cross's slide, that most of the people who are utilizing this are single, 1 to 2, starter home type folks, like was just described, where we know we have a huge need for families that might want to achieve the dream of home ownership. And is there a way to, I know there's some that benefit, and I know Mr. Naeem is looking for maybe that slide, but how do we address either on the counseling side and or the hard money side of, assistance, helping those, those families in that, what can we do to just speak to that market a little more, and obviously they're going to need different types of homes, right? That, a condo might not, a 1-bedroom condo probably wouldn't do it. And so I don't know if anyone has thoughts on that.
Well, I guess
you got the short stick.
That's a great question, and it is a difficult one, and that's where our partners like Habitat and others, where HOC recently partnered with Habitat to sell a number of our scattered sites, which are the larger homes, townhomes, single-family homes that can go through the program with Habitat to be more affordable. That's the biggest challenge in terms of those larger families and the housing stock and the cost for those homes. So looking for those partners that can help produce another avenue and additional homes that are affordable. And I think, you raised some really great questions. And as we continue our administration of our programs, we can start asking some of those questions ourselves, and some of the data we're obtaining, especially for the individuals who are unsuccessful or do not move forward with home ownership purchasing. We can can try to get more data so that we can be better informed on what that delta could have been that would have helped larger families, and ultimately think through potentially crafting an approach for that submarket.
It's one of the reasons why I think like the council, I was so adamant about the counseling, because I know in the counseling you're serving the whole panoply of families. You know, so for some of them it might just be, I need help to get rid of my debt. We have a household with 2 earners. We need to get rid of debt. I need to get my credit up so I can get into the normal marketplace and just need that assistance. You know, you might not need, I'm sure the down payment assistance would help. They probably need that too, or in the closing cost assistance. But yeah, I just put that as kind of a challenge of, as we're thinking about, obviously we always need more resources, but and we want to encourage, we don't want to discourage the starter, the people coming in. We want that to keep happening and happen more of. But we also want to think about, you know, realizing when you're thinking about our African American community, our Latino community, where in the Latino community, 50% rent, African American community, 60% rent, and we're trying to change that dynamic. And in realizing family size and who's there, we have to have a proactive strategy for that. And we do in Habitat, but those are on the margins, right? That's very. And we were all many of us were at the latest Habitat opening, which was awesome for those families. But we need to try to figure out how we can do more of it. So, yeah, Ms. Carl?
I'm just throwing this out there as a possible solution. So the current programs are tied to the income, but there is no asset test. So one thing that I don't have the data on, unfortunately, is how much additional savings individuals have. But the fact that a lot of these loans have been given to such low-income homeowners makes me think that there would be additional assets that the underwriters are looking at. A possibility then is the bigger the unit, the higher the cost. There could be some kind of tie to a percentage of the sales price instead, so that, you know, it increases, the value would increase as the size of the unit would increase.
That's a great point. I had 2 people raise their hands, so maybe they can come up and then I'll yield back to you.
Come on up, and I think speak to the general question, if you could, from Councilor Juano, and then the specific, you know, how easy would it be to implement, you know, once you get into assets and underwriting, the administrative burden of that is much higher. You become the bank and the underwriter as well. Just understanding what, if any, additional administrative burden and cost that would create for you.
That's what I wanted to mention, particularly about underwriting. Don't forget the affordability ratios. So the less money as assistance you give, then you price out a lot of the low-income home buyers, particularly the ones with income below 50% AMI. So for example, a difference between $25,000, $30,000 DPA, $35,000 makes a big difference, because you end up helping borrowers with income at the, the higher range of the whole, range that we look at, 0 to 80%. As I said, generally, I think almost all your buyers are below 80% AMI. So you really price out the borrowers with very low income that need this type of assistance, because it's one of the ratios that comes up in the underwriting of those loans. And then you were asking about the need in the county, at least for as I'm looking at some stats on the data from the Maryland Mortgage Program across the state. So it looks like we, in Montgomery County, we leveraged up to about $65 million in loans. Your program leveraged $12.7 million in mortgages in the state. So maybe, 5 times more, I can say, is needed just based on our numbers, for and which are also insufficient. But this is my program, the Maryland Mortgage Program, is a $1 billion program a year. So
we modestly suggested just 2 times.
Yep.
I was just kidding.
Just that gives you an idea of the need and what's going on, in terms of the underwriting angles of when you look at the assistance needed.
Thank you. Let's hear from.
Yeah, I would like also to add, LDC works with first-time home buyers in the District of Columbia as well, and we are one of the community-based organizations helping the community to apply for the Home Purchase Assistance Program, or the HPAP program. The program offers right now $202,000 up to. So I would say that in the county, we need also to pay attention to affordability, as Summer was mentioning, because in DC, that is not enough for our low to moderate income families. So the HPAP program has a table that has 3 different categories, from very low, moderate, and very low, low, and moderate income households. So depending on their income and the number of households, people in their household, that is the amount that they are eligible for. So that can be a way that if there is a possibility to increase the amount, that is not the same amount for everybody, so we can keep in mind helping those families that can need more support, right? Because it's not the same a family that is in the 50% AMI that a family that is in the 100% AMI. What is the need in terms of down payment assistance? So these are models that have been relatively working in other jurisdictions. I always like to advocate for the low income families. They need more assistance, right? But definitely, if there is a decision that how many people we help, and if there is no money to allocate to increase that amount, definitely helping more people can be the way to go. But just to keep in mind, low to moderate income families and the affordability also, that if the affordability keeps going up, as we saw in one of the graphics, that houses are close to $1 million in the county, it's going to be really difficult to help everybody.
Appreciate that. Go ahead.
And please,
Yes.
sorry, for MHP and MATPA, remember those are loans, so the funds, when
Right.
they get paid off, come back to the county.
Right.
So it's a
We like that.
recycling.
Yeah.
Yes, we do too.
Yeah, Carmen Castro with Housing Initiative Partnership. So what I've seen from other jurisdictions in Maryland, for instance, Howard County, they have kept their $25,000 down payment closing cost assistance for people at 100% AMI, and they increase up to $40,000 for those at 80% AMI.
So it goes up for the lower AMI.
Yes, so that's one option. The city of Gatesburg will start doing that as of July 1st. Do the same, up to $40,000 for 80% AMI, and up to $25,000 for 100 AMI. So that's another way of like encouraging
That could kind of get at what
households.
I'm talking about. Like if you had a household that has that AMI, I'd be curious to see if that's helping larger families. I
You
would
would
suspect
qualify
so.
for more,
Yeah.
because the income levels for AMI go higher based on,
Right.
so likely there would be more in the market for a house because they'd be at a higher.
Yeah. That's helpful. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I know there's a lot to say, but that's all very helpful. I yield back.
Because that would disproportionately benefit larger families,
Right.
because a family of 3 or 4 household size increases the AMI level.
While
so-
not taking money away from
Yeah,
the lower
yeah.
folks. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's something for us to think about as we,
If you would like, we can share the HPAP table so you can see how.
yeah, that would be great if you could share that with us. Just a quick question, two main questions. The first question is for the counseling and the down payment assistance. I know the counsel, you don't have to get the down payment assistance to get the counseling, but one of the things that we talked about, does everybody who gets does everyone who gets any version of the down payment assistance have to go through some version of the counseling?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I thought so. I just thought it was important. It wasn't explicitly addressed here, so I just wanted to make sure that that was said as part of the context of this conversation, because we talked about that during the budget. And how is it decided? Do they get to choose which of the counseling services, or depending on which program they're in, they get directed to a certain counseling service?
So Naeem, can you go back to the screen? I have 2 screenshots of HOC and DHCD. It's towards the beginning. So those are the websites when he gets there. Yeah, right here. Nope. Sorry, back 2. Nope. Towards the front. Anyway, yeah. So this is they each have links to HUD page for housing counseling services. And if you go forward,
And those are the two
which
that
is takes you
are
to this
approved.
website. Any housing counseling provider that is HUD certified will qualify. However, there's only 2 located in Montgomery County.
So
So
unless
if you
someone wanted to go
that
outside of the county to, unless you're going to Riverdale, Hyattsville.
or 100% virtual, but then there's no housing counseling for those.
Right, okay, got it. Okay, that's helpful. I just wanted to make sure that was part of this conversation. The conversation that we had a couple, 3 budgets ago, maybe it was, where we expanded to public employees. There was the whole question about collective bargaining. We were supportive of it, but wanted to give some space to the executive to, bargain that. Those funds, this is the only program where the funds are not being spent fully. So the question for that is twofold. One, public safety is not included in that. Is there an interest, are there ongoing conversations where the executive is intending, planning as part of collective bargaining to expand to the public safety bargaining units in order to use those funds? Or are there any thoughts of changing the allocation requested in the next budget to better reflect the reality of what's actually being spent and the demand? I mean, I don't want to take, I have no interest in taking anything away, but either we need to expand who is receiving this so that it actually is meeting the need, or there is an overwhelming number of people we just finished talking about. It's somewhere between 2 and 5 times the amount of resources that we have, and we have a fund that isn't utilizing the full funds. And while I appreciate the fact that there are some ongoing efforts by 2 of the bargaining units that are included, the educators and McGeo, I'm a little skeptical based on the actual usage rates that modest level of increased advertising is going to fill that gap. And so, to me, I'd love to see more public employees get it. I think that was a good thing that we did, and I hope that we, do what we talked about. Let's see how it works, and let's try to expand it if it works. And if not, let's match it to what the reality is, and let's put the money in the other programs that are under-subscribed, because providing homeownership opportunities to people who need them in Montgomery County is broadly a good thing, whether it's public employees, which we would love to see, or it's our residents who need it as well. So any knowledge or understanding?
Yeah, so DHCA has been having continuing conversations with our OLR, who's put us in touch with many of the different unions. We have been told from one organization that they don't have an interest in participating in this. We're not quite sure, but we have clear language from them that they are not interested. We are having continuing conversations with everyone else. We had a very good conversation with McGeo recently, who, like I said, is going to help start to advertise and promote this more, that they believe with that additional boost of advertisement that they're going to put out and try to make sure that every one of their employees is aware of this, that we can spend it down quickly.
Okay, I'm going to request that we get an update.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say one in September, by September 1st, and one by December 1st, of how much of those funds are actually expended. And I'd like to have it compared with the other programs. That would be around the time that budget decisions internally are going to have to be made and ongoing conversations will be made. And I think we should revisit this dynamic, and either, the interests change and there's an opportunity to expand this to more bargaining units and more public employees. I think that would be a great outcome. The advertising among McGeo to their members works great, and there's more subscription to this and more utilization. That would be a great outcome. Or if not, I think we need to revisit and decide, what makes the most sense to make sure that we're leveraging these resources in the way that is most appropriate.
Sure. Scott Bruton, Director of the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, for the record. Summer, would you agree that we could do quarterly updates on the spend down for the programs?
Well, so we get quarterly updates.
Yeah.
So after those, which would be...
Right.
When are the quarterly updates that you get?
Trying to think, August. We do get it on October, so it would be late October we could provide that. Then we get it after December, so January would be an ideal time for the next.
Okay, so by November 1st, or,
Yep.
by October 31st and by January 31st. Does that, and we can have council staff follow up with the department? I mean, I want you to have data that's usable for you and for us, that we can make smart decisions here, but I think we owe it to our partners who are running out of resources. I think we owe it to our bargaining units, give them a chance to advertise more and get more folks to utilize, and then I think we owe it to residents to figure out what's the best way to utilize these resources to promote home ownership, which we know is the primary way to build wealth. Whether we like that or not, whether we think that's the best system or not, that is the one that we've got. So we're going to have to deal with it for the time being.
Did you want any more additional information on why? Summer, we can, if you'd like to ask further questions, we can provide some of the motivation for why the public safety unions are not interested in this.
I think that would be helpful, and I also think the demographic breakdown between the public employee program versus the other programs would be helpful. That was something that Councilmember Joando had asked previously, that I think was a helpful part of this conversation in comparing the numbers. They should be completely opposite of what the home ownership numbers look like in the county, and most of the data shows that generally they are, which actually means that it's a good public sector intervention. It's a good government intervention. We're providing help to the people who aren't getting it in the private market. If it looked similar to what the broader market was doing, then I'm not sure that this would be a totally necessary subsidy and intervention. We're trying to change the dynamics of who is participating in home ownership in Montgomery County, which is hard to do and very multi-layered and multifaceted. But I think that would be helpful as well. Are there any other requests from colleagues on the reporting on that?
No, I'm glad you brought it. I was just going to say, I'm glad he brought up MedPal. I was going to, if I had a round two, but we worked it out as a team here, so I would just double tap that. I think I'm interested to know the why and what's happening and how we can do better.
I can provide a little bit more information. I mean,
sure.
Part of the issue is who lives where. So Montgomery County does not have a residency requirement for its employees, and so what we've found in talking with some of the public safety unions is a really significant portion of their staff do not live in the county. And so this is restricted to purchasing a home in Montgomery County, and so it's of less interest to them. Also because a really significant portion of their members have mandatory is not necessarily the right term, but effectively mandatory overtime, or they get a significant amount of overtime. Many end up being over income because of that. And so, we're trying to get at the details for, what is the motivation for each of and even McGeo, some of their members, because of overtime, can end up being over income. And so we're trying to kind of tease out how to better serve the different unions, as well as, the different represented, non-represented, managers as well, who aren't, like management staff, to try to make MedPal more effective for more of the people who serve the residents of Montgomery County.
Please, Councilor Flanagan-Gonzalez.
Thank you so much. Can you also, I want to make sure that as you have more conversations with the unions, and when you say education, do you also include SCU 500? Because they're para-educators in the school system. They're also included, right?
Yes, I'm pretty sure. I don't have the list in front of me, but I know there's 3 or 4 different unions within MCU.
Yeah, that should be. I just want to always talk about the teachers union, but that's different from SCU 500. Maybe the answer is not to eliminate this program, but because it's $1 million that we maybe it's to be reduced.
Yeah, just to be clear,
fit
I was
reality.
never suggesting eliminating the program.
No, but
What
just
I'm suggesting is whether
putting
or
that on
not
the
the
record.
funding amount is the right number, and I
Yeah.
think we'll get a sense when there's more advertising, if there's more uptake. If there's not, then I think we need to look at a reallocation within these programs and hopefully an expansion of them as well.
You know, another idea would be, and granted, I would have to talk with folks like Naeem and, Pof and Salem, who's our budget expert, and OMB, but we could have triggers that if MedPal does not spend down a significant portion by the second or third quarter, then it gets transferred over to the other program so that we don't have as much line.
Yeah, I think in order to do that, we'll have to look at this for and that was one of the things that I was going to think about for the budget for next year and why I thought the quarterly would be helpful. But we would have to allocate the first 500 to the program and then another 500 to homeownership programs in general, and probably direct the department if it's underutilized to a certain level, they're eligible for that funding, and if not, then it could be utilized for another homeownership program or something along those lines. But
we don't like seeing money unspent.
Yeah.
We want to serve.
So, all right, well, that gives us some things to think about, and hopefully this will prompt some conversations before the budget comes so we don't run into some of the dynamics we have in the past. I know there's a shared commitment to avoid. Just a note, I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but you might want to, on the LEDC presentation, there was one of the demographic charts that I think the numbers were off. There was no reference to the ONP AAPI demographic, and so I think the white numbers were elevated, and there was no Asian AAPI ONP one. So we don't need to pull it up. We don't need to make a big deal out of it, but just for future, if we're reposting this, if that could be looked at and maybe fixed, just to make sure that it's accurate, I think that would be helpful. Yeah, here it is, county demographics. It has 58.3% white.
So we can, Walter, can you all get us within the next couple of days an updated version? And so we can send an updated version.
Yeah, that just if this is being posted, I think it'd be helpful just to have that be corrected. I think, yeah, that'd be great. So just don't want to be overly sensitive, but I also think we need to be representative of our whole community. I know it was an honest mistake, but I just wanted to note that. Let me turn it to Councilor Toronto.
Yep, I just wanted, before we wrap, and hope you don't get mad at me, I just wanted to thank Summer Cross, who I believe this will be your last meeting before us. She's leaving to take a great opportunity, and you've done a great job, and I'm sad about it, but I just wanted to publicly say thank you for your work, and congratulations, and good luck with where you're going.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Ditto to that. We are very sorry to see you go. You've been a tremendous asset to the county, to DHCA, and to us on this committee in particular, and really appreciate your partnership and collaboration. Hasn't always been easy. We've had to grapple through some tough issues, but you have handled it with grace and with professionalism and with a real commitment to the work that you do, and we all very much appreciate it and appreciate you and wish you well.
Thank you very much.
All right. With that, thank you to all of our partners. This is a team effort. Certainly, we don't do this program alone. DHCA doesn't even run the programs. It just helps the partners run the programs and do the work and do the outreach in the community. I think it's reflective of a lot of the most important work that we do. We talk about the moral test of government, looking after the folks at the dawn of life, the twilight of life, and in the shadows of life. We can't meet that moral test of government with government alone. And so the community partners, as was evidenced here, are critical to that. HOC as an agency partner, and HIP and LEDC as key partners in this work. So thank you for that. And with that, we are adjourned. All right. Thanks, Naeem.